Welcome back to the ETF Inspector. It's Tuesday, October 14th, about 6:45 in the evening, and this is our daily recap video for our three YieldMax weekly paying funds: ULTY, the Ultra Option Income Strategy Fund; LFGY, the Crypto Industry Option Income Fund; and SLTY, the Ultra Short Option Income Strategy Fund. Before we get started, a reminder, as always, I'm on X at ETF_Inspector1. I post to let you know when videos are premiering. If you want to be in the live chat, this comes through faster than the notification on YouTube. Please still hit the notification. That still tells YouTube people like the channel, and it suggests it to more people, potentially drawing in a bigger crowd. But I also post other things all related to the ETFs. None of this is anything other than financial and ETF related. And before I get started, I owe some thank yous that I actually forgot to include yesterday, but we'll get them in there now. So I apologize for the late thank you, and we'll do it right now. So on the LFGY and blocks week look ahead and distribution guesstimate video from Sunday, the chat started out with Bon buying 5 memberships to the YouTube channel as a gift and giving them away. And it looks like Satoshi's limo driver, Kirk Hanna, NZ Blake, I obviously can't pronounce that one, and Rico Silva were the 5 that received that. So a lot of times people end up thanking me. Don't thank me. Bon is the one who paid for it and donated them. So thank her. I found out today that Bon is a her. Sorry. My dog wanting to get in on the action here, making videos. And then later on in the video, Satoshi's limo driver gave a $2 super, these are called super chats, saying they appreciate the blocks coverage. So Satoshi's limo driver, thank you very much. I appreciate the support. All right, real quick before we get into it, just thought I'd point out the cool new website from YieldMax. Still got all the information. It's just presented in a little bit different way. Pretty interesting. I would suggest take a look at this video, big changes at YieldMax. I talk about how they changed from monthly to weekly on 99% of the funds, as well as changes to the website. So that's all I wanted to say on that. All right, we'll take a look at the market. It was definitely a wild roller coaster of a day. You take it the start of the day, ULTY was as low as 532 right off the opening bell. It dropped, got as high as 545, so a 13-cent swing before dropping back into the negative to close the day. So we were all over the place. I know I checked my spreadsheets kind of live time, and at one point we were up $65 million overall on the day, only to drop below that break even, that starting point at the close. We'll look at LFGY. They also had a very similar day, started very low, ran up into a nice positive, only to finish into a slight drop, 0.08%, not really anything to worry about. And then SLTY, it's a down day, so SLTY was doing well. It did drop as the market, so this is kind of the inverse. The market dropped early, so SLTY went up, then it rose all day, so SLTY went down, and then it kind of crossed back into the negative at the end, so SLTY just barely crossed into the positive at the end. Nothing real major movement-wise, though. I did forget to say the actual percentage. ULTY was up or down 3.37%. We'll look at all the individuals as we go through the spreadsheet, but let's start with today was declaration day as well, so that's another reason this video was the big changes. So it talks about moving to weekly, it talks about the website change, and then it also is the group 1 distribution declarations. They're no longer separated as weeklies and group A, B, C, or D. They are now group 1, group 2, and then there are the target 12s that remained monthly. So group 1 is what used to be the weeklies plus feet and 5e. So I go in detail on all of the Group 1 declarations in that video. Go check that out. I keep them nice and short, try to stay right around 10 minutes if I can. That one went a little long because I talked about the website and the changes. So ULTY though, if you watched yesterday's video, or we'll back up, Sunday's video, I made my guesstimate of 8.68 cents per share. On Monday, which is when they make the actual final decision, the market was up big, so I did say if I could, I would increase my guesstimate back up to 9 cents. I didn't think they were going to break their 9-cent streak after a day like that, where they were up 170 million. So, but I left things alone. And they did announce today 9.08 cents per share. So my original estimate's off by 4.4%. So either way, not too far off. And I'm sure everybody's happy to still be getting 9 cents a share. Now, when we get into their trades for the day, before we get into the options, we have two new underlyings. They bought shares of Hut 8 Corp, which you are familiar with from LFGY, and Iron Limited, which you are familiar with from over in, I think they're in blocks, but over in SLTY. Odd quantity, right? If you take a look in general, the average holding in ULTY is 4.5%. Just to give you an idea, that's 131 million. Sometimes they add small quantities just to dip their toe in the water, like what they did with Iron with 50 million. But Hut 8 Corp, they bought $890,000 worth. So very odd, very small entry amount. Not what we're used to seeing, but okay. Next, we get into the options trades. We start out with BitMine Immersion, where they closed the $61 calls that were sold for this week and opened 57s still for this week. So they're still trying to collect some extra premium. That resulted in a credit of $215,000. CoreWeave, they did a complete change out, closing the calls and the puts within the collar strategy and starting all the new still for this same Friday, collecting 3.3 million. Figma, this is just an adjustment of the puts. They sold their $64 puts, got 4.4 million for them, and bought 61s. Remember, these are big downside protection. So if it goes down a little bit, we'll just take the profit on it and then protect a little further down. So that was a $2.1 million credit. Doing the same thing with Hood. Resulted in a $1.3 million credit, adjusting the puts from 140 down to 135. Hut 8 Corp, we just said we bought shares of it, so we're going to start a collar strategy where we buy puts to protect our shares and sell calls to generate income. It resulted in an $8,000 credit. Same thing with Iron with the call strategy, but that one resulted in a $224,000 credit. Next, we have MP Materials Corp. This is a complete close and roll of the position, still within the same week, but having to adjust the strikes higher. Cost us $9.6 million, so obviously MP share price ran beyond our sold strikes. But the silver lining is now we went from protection at the $80 strike price all the way up to $95. So we went from selling calls at 86 when 86 was out of the money to now we've locked in, we've bought puts at 95. Rigetti, same thing. Price went way up. We had to close out and roll still within the same week again. That cost us $7.7 million. Once again, same thing for New Scale Power. That cost $9.3 million. Staying within the same week still. SoundHound AI, one more time, same thing, but it wasn't the complete position. It was only a portion of it. Is that right? 40,000? Yeah, because I think I checked. There was 60-something thousand, right? 64,000. So it's not all of them, but that did cost $8.9 million, staying within the same week. And finally, Symbotic, rolling to a higher strike within the same week, cost us $7.1 million. So we had a lot of costs that resulted in a $35 million loss or debit in the options trading. My only thing is I just hope that wasn't based off of how the market performed early, and then when it gave it back up, it wasn't needed, but we'll see. On the share value changes just from market moving, we went up 2.8 million, so not very significant. At one point, like I said, it was up 65 million, so two's not that big of a deal. When we look at the underlyings and see how they moved, Affirm was down 1/3%, puts at calls at 78 or almost 7% out, puts sold at 65 or 10+% out of the money. Bullish was down 0.4, $64 calls are almost 8% out of the money. Bitmine Immersion was the big loser today, dropping by 6.86%. They closed the $61 calls and adjusted them closer to the money. 5750s are still in play at 8.5% out. Centene Corp closing at 36.44. They have a put spread selling the 37s to generate income. They're actually in the money by 1.5%. Coinbase was down 4.3%. Their calls at 370 are still 8.3% out of the money. CoreWeave was down 5.3%. The further out of the money positions got adjusted closer. The 144s are still in play, 7.4% out. There's $606 million in government obligation funds and negative 40 million in cash and other, so about $560-ish million, 565. Kind of consider that dry powder, but it's not necessarily, because it's a lot of it has to do with the put spreads. Figma was down 5.3%. All they did on those was adjusted the puts to a higher strike or a lower strike on that one. The $70 calls are 15% out of the money. Hims and Hers down a little over 1.25. They've got calls sold at 56 and 60. They're 3.6 and 11% out. They also sold puts at 38 and 42. They're not even remotely close, 20s to 30% out. Robinhood was down over 4% today. That brought their 146s and 147s to 8 and almost 9% out of the money. They did adjust their puts. I want to say they went from 140 to 135. We just talked about it a second ago. Lucid up almost 2.5%. Calls sold at 23.50 are still 7.2% out of the money. Lululemon, here's another one of those put spreads. The sold puts at 172.50 are still about 2% in the money. MP Material Corp up almost 3.8%. Excuse me. They rolled the calls that were way in the money at 86, and they still have calls at 100 that are 1.3% out. They rolled the associated puts as well. Strategy was down almost 4.7%. Calls are sold at 330 and 332.50, pretty evenly split there, 9.7 and 10.5% out of the money. Open Door up over 5%, closing at 764. I just pay attention to that because I have puts sold at 750, so stay above that 750 mark. Calls are sold at 8 and 8.50, 4.7 and 11+% out of the money. Palantir was up 1.4%. They've sold calls at 185. They're already rolled to next Friday. They're 2.9% out of the money. Pony AI is down over 5%. They have 2150s and 2350s in play, 2.2 and 11.7% out of the money. Quantum Computing was up 1.5%, so their 21s went even further to 3.5% in the money. They've got 2250s and 23s that are 3.3 and 5.6% out of the money. Rigetti Computing was up 2.25. Deepest in the money calls got rolled along with their puts, but they still have 49s and 50s that are also almost 11 and 12+% in the money. So they're taking a loss all day on Rigetti. Rocket Lab up almost 4%, still 2.9% out on those sold 70s. Rocket Companies was up almost 3%, still another 3.25 to go on the 1750s. Puts sold at 14 are nice and safe, 17% out of the money. New Scale Power was up 1.7%. The deepest in the money calls and their associated puts and sold puts all got closed and rolled. The $42 calls sold are still over 8% in the money, and then they've got 46s that are about 0.5% out of the money. SoundHound AI was the big winner, going up nearly 9%. Unfortunately, they were practically right at the money, so when they went up, things didn't really work out. We're not really able to capture much of any of that because as the share value would increase dollar for dollar, the cost to close out the call would increase as well, offsetting each other. Symbotic up 4.4%. Both calls are in the money. The deeper ones got rolled. The 71s are still in play, 3.5% in the money, and Upstart up just over 1.5%. Calls sold at 55 are still 9% out of the money. They also sold some puts to help pay for the protective puts. They're 16% out. So that's how you had a $2.8 million increase in the value of the underlyings within the fund. Assets under management, $3.4 billion. No change in shares yesterday. There was not a real difference between people buying and people selling. So no changes. 627,850,000. NAV at the start of the day, 541. Closing 542. Closing price 541. Is that final, or did it take? Is it still not updating? So this says 540 close and then 541 after hours. So we're in a 1 or 2 penny range. Our average first call or closest to the money call is about 2.25% out, and second calls are about 5% out. That gives you an idea of how much things can move on average before we are what they would say capped. We're not really capped because we have active management, and so they are always trading and closing out and selling new options to open back up the upside. All right, next we will look at LFGY. We'll get through this one real quick. Right off the bat, no trades. So I double-checked it, triple-checked it, couldn't believe it. But so we'll take a nice short portion of the video. So we'll put a 0 in there, not a O, a 0 for the trading. And that's not what I wanted to do. Oh, well, we'll fix that later. We'll take a look at the announcement. So we said last week they earned about 10 cents per share in income, not enough. The IV estimate was just under 57. Should have just gone with that, but I didn't think they were going to pay that high based on how bad things fell on Friday and the fact that the IV only jumped on Friday. So I made a guesstimate of 49.4, and we got a nice big surprise, almost 9 cents more than the guesstimate, 15%. I will take 15% surprises to the upside every week. It doesn't bother me at all. So I'm sure everybody's nice and happy about a 58 plus cent distribution. I am kind of curious how long it's been since we got one like that. I think there was a 60 in there not too long ago. Maybe not. So 58, last time we got a payment that high, we got to go way back. We got to go back to May. That's the highest payment since May. So everybody should be nice and happy with their LFGY payment. All right, when we look at how the underlyings within the fund performed, we start right off the bat with our biggest loser, Bitmine Immersion, down 6.8%. These guys do not trade a collar strategy. They're not purchasing protective puts. They're just generating income, selling calls. So $59 calls are 11+% out of the money. BitDeer was down 1.6%. They're still in the money by 0.6 on their 20s. Clean Spark up almost 10%. Took the calls into the money by about 4.5% on those 21s. So we got to capture about half, a little over half of that run. Coinbase down 4.3%. They've got 400 sold, 17% out of the money. Core Scientific was down 1.4%. 18s are still in the money by about 5%, and 19s have dropped back out of the money by 1/3%. Circle Internet Group down over 2%. $155 calls are 15% out of the money. iShares Ethereum Trust ETF down 3.4%. They are now 9.4% out on the $34 calls. Not a lot of money sitting in dry powder, that's for sure. 317 in government funds, 2.1 million in cash and other. Galaxy Digital was down 0.2%. $43 calls are 4.5% out. GameStop down 1.5%. They have calls sold at $24.50 and $25, but as you see, the 25s is a very small position. All the money's at $24.50, 5.5% and 7.6% out. Robinhood was down over 4% today. $150 calls are still 11% out of the money. Hut 8 Corp was up 1.7%. $54 calls are 8+% out. iShares Bitcoin Trust ETF down 2.89%. No options, so it's just a share price drop, which drops our market value by $500,000. Mara was the big winner today, up 9.88%, killing me. I was aggressively selling puts at 15 when they were like $15.20 trying to get assigned, and now they're $22. I never got my shares, but that took their $20.50 calls into the money by 7.8%. MBTX, we don't own any shares. We've got this call credit spread selling the 290s. They're now 8.9% out. And we've got the put debit spread where we're buying 255s to generate income, and they're only 4.25% out. So that was a drop today, so that value will increase when we get the updated download up, down later on tonight. Mercado Libre was down 0.8%. 2200s are still almost 2% out of the money. Strategy was again down 4.6%, almost 14% out of the money on those 342.50s. NU Holdings down 1.1%, $15 calls dropped back out of the money by 0.6. Nvidia was down 4.4%. They've got calls sold at 197.50 that are 9.7% out. Opera was up 0.5%. We've got calls sold at 17.50 and 20. The 20s are the ones that matter. 4,300 contracts compared to 94, but those are 6 and 21% out of the money. PayPal was up 0.4%. 76s are about 10% out. Riot Platforms up 2.25, still 1.4% out on those 2250s. And finally, Block XYZ up 1.5%. $79 calls are still 3.7% out of the money. So that is how we had a $640,000 decrease in the value of our shares within the fund. Assets under management at the start of the day, $218 million. People did buy into the fund yesterday to the tune of 125,000 new shares getting added, bringing our outstanding shares up to 5.8 million. At the start of the day, the NAV was 37.71. It closed at 37.73 or close to it. Let's see. That says 37.75. So Excel sometimes takes a little bit of time to finish out on their updating of everything. Okay, now finally we will go to SLTY. All right, SLTY bought to close their Iron Limited, and they short sold some United Airlines holdings. So we are now shorting United Airlines, and we've stopped shorting Iron, and that whole trade did not work out well. I could go back and try and find when we got into them, but it really doesn't matter because there's no point which would make it a win. I forgot I moved them up into ULTY because ULTY added them. So whether you look at the last week where they're up 17%, the last month where they're up 101%, or the last 3 months where they're up 312%, at no point was it a good time to be shorting Iron. So we definitely paid a lot more to close them than we received when we shorted them in the first place. So regardless of how well we do options trading this week, it's going to end up, that'll offset all of it for sure. So is what it is. All right, next we are doing some options trading on Astera Labs, closing and rolling. These have been so far in the money, it was ridiculous. Closing out those puts cost $42 a share. Selling the new ones brought in $3.89. So that's a $208,000 loss. Astera Labs, we're adjusting the puts closer to the money. That brought in $9,000. Same thing with Enphase Energy, bringing in $6,000. And then Iron, we just had to close out all the options because we are no longer holding them in the fund. And so those protective calls that we had purchased generated some income, resulting in a $52,000 credit. Really nothing compared to the $1.4 million we had to pay to close it. And then we started our reverse collar strategy on United Airlines, buying calls to protect in the event it goes up and selling puts to generate income, $16,000 credit. So all in all, it was a $124,000 loss on the options trading side of it. That does not take into account the losses from shorting Iron and then buying it to close at a higher price. Share values within the fund did increase by a total of $42,000. That's because we had more going down than going up today. Right off the bat, Astera Labs, I mean, they picked a great one to short. They just haven't been rolling it in time. So they were already deep in the money before dropping 19% today. So we're not really able to capture any of that because as that helps our share value, it hurts our cost to close out. So everything got rolled. None of those options matter right now. We'll have the new ones tomorrow. AMD up 0.77%. Their puts are still in the money by 3% at 225. They sell calls to help pay for the other calls at 275. They're 26% out. AST Space Mobile up 4.4%. As you can see, that hurts because you've shorted it. You want it to go down. When it goes up, it actually drops your value. Puts got closed out and rolled. They've got calls sold at 110, 16% out. Bloom Energy was up 3.7. Again, we want things going down over here. $95 puts are 16+% out of the money. BitDeer was down 1.6%, but unfortunately they were already in the money. So all of that move resulted in an offset where the increase would have helped our market value. It would have, or the decrease would have made these puts cost that much more to close out. So they're about 1.9% in the money. Sold calls at 26 are 29% out. Circle Internet Group down 2.1%. Again, they were already in the money, so the full offset happens again. Didn't really help us. 141s are 4.8% in the money. $210 calls are 56% out of the money. Duolingo was up almost 0.8%. They've got puts sold at 325, 2.2% out of the money, and calls sold at 410, 23% out. Enphase Energy up 4.65%. They closed and rolled those sold puts. Don't really go over the government obligation funds and the cash because you never really have dry powder when you've shorted shares because you always have to be ready to buy them to close them, and they could go to an unlimited amount. GitLab was up 1.29%. 43.50 puts are 2.8% out of the money. $53 calls are 18% out. Iron, I think I forgot to line this out. No longer in the fund, so we don't really care what they did because they're gone now. We'll strike through them. No more Iron. But they were actually the largest increaser on the day, so that hurt a lot, $111,000 worth. We can check to see if did we buy to close at a cheaper price than where it ended, $69.56. We paid $68.43, so we saved over $1 per share on 20,500 shares. So we saved a little bit. Kratos down over 1%, but they were already in the money and went further, so that's going to get offset again. $98 puts, 2.8% in the money. $120 calls sold about 26% out. Lemonade was up 4.29%. Puts sold at 48 are 8.6% out of the money. Nebius Group was down 5.4%. So we got to capture all of that because our puts are still out of the money. 126s are 1.6% out. RH up 0.89%. Puts are sold at 177.50, 3% out of the money. Calls are sold at 220, 20% out of the money. And Tesla down 1.5%. Puts are sold at 402.50, 6.2% out of the money. And that is how we had a roughly $42,000 increase in the value of the shares within our fund. Assets under management at the start of the day, about 17.6 million. No changes from the previous day for shares, 450,000. NAV at the start of the day, 39.32. Closing price, 39.37. All right, that is all I have for you. Did I talk about? I didn't talk about this. I forgot to talk about the estimate. Income said around 90 cents, but that didn't take into account if they had lost any money on trading shares. IV estimate was saying 75 cents. Even with both of those being high, I was guessing it was going to be lower than that. I just didn't drop it enough because they only paid 46.1 cents per share. My guesstimate of 66 was 44% off. So a disappointment from SLTY for sure. But yeah, I was guessing they were going to pay around 85%. And what did they end up saying that percentage was? About 60%. So pretty far off. All right, that's all I have for you. So I got a dad joke to close us out. Give you something to laugh at after you listen to me talk for 30 minutes. So thank you for all your likes, shares, comments, all the support. And so here is your dad joke of the day. So your veterinarian won't tell you this, but if your dog is running a fever, go to the store and buy some mustard. It's the best thing for a hot dog. All right, well, now you got to let me know in the comments, are you team mustard or team hot dog or team ketchup? Because I actually don't like mustard. I like ketchup on my hot dogs. So, and I've heard it before. That's what children do. So, anyway, good luck trading tomorrow. Have a good night, and I'll catch you in the next video.